Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and this is the Stu Benz. Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Oh, hold on real quick. There we go. We had it bumped a little bit, the camera. Well, we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm so glad that you joined us. We have a lot to discuss this morning. We're going to be talking about, well, New York State issues. We also have a few things here about updates from last week. Of course, heavy topic last week was Speaker Johnson. Would he get reelected, if you will, as Speaker? That was quite a show to watch on Friday. Did you catch it? What were your thoughts? Of course, there were a few holdouts, and then it sounds like maybe President-elect Donald Trump made a few phone calls, put on a little bit of a pressure campaign, and those votes changed. Ultimately, Thomas Massie was the only lone holdout that did not vote for him. Not sure Massie's motivation there, if it was just the attention, if it was the grandstanding, the showboating. I think that's a question that I would pose to you. What are your thoughts on Representative Massie? First, breaking news coming in late last night, early this morning. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who recently met with President-elect Donald Trump, and that's when Trump continues to make the joke that he should be governor of the 51st state, meaning that Canada should become the 51st state. Well, Justin Trudeau is expected to announce his resignation. Calls were mounting for him to step down. Three sources told the Globe and the Mail, which Canadian outlet, on Sunday that Trudeau could reveal he's leaving as Liberal Party leader before a critical National Caucus meeting on Wednesday. It is unclear what day he would announce his resignation, but it reportedly could happen as early as today, is what is being reported. The bombshell report comes as an embattled Trudeau has faced increasing calls for his resignation as Donald Trump's presidency and the threat of 25% tariffs on all products north of the border looms large. So we'll keep an eye on that. We mentioned it, I think last week, it might have been the week before, that there were talks of him resigning. Whether or not that will come to fruition, three sources say it will, but we will wait. Also, on the international front, this is becoming more and more common to the point where I don't believe the media is even covering it to the extent that it should, but Chinese hackers ran amok in the United States telecom network for 18 months. Yes, 18 months. Chinese hackers were in our telecom network. They got info on over 1 million people, according to a new report. The full extent of, as the New York Post calls it, their shenanigans is still unknown. Now, they almost, and I don't accuse the New York Post of doing this at all, but they almost downplay this because it is a real serious threat. China is perhaps the biggest threat that we face. On the international front, we know that they want to be the lone superpower, well, along with the help of Russia and Iran. Beginning around mid-2023, nefarious cyber intruders, who are part of a hacking group known as Salt Typhoon, which has ties to Chinese intelligence, penetrated Verizon, AT&T, and systems used for court-backed surveillance, according to the Wall Street Journal. The latter systems reportedly entailed individuals whom the U.S. government suspected of being agents for China. Without specifying which company, the report claimed that the hackers got into one U.S. telecommunications network for 18 months and into another company's network for 6 months. During that time, hackers targeted calls and phone lines tied to Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Kamala Harris, as well as individuals in their orbits. You can see the real serious implications that this holds. A particular focus for the hackers were telecommunications coming out of Washington, D.C., and in all, they were able to get their hands on a trove of IP addresses, phone numbers, and more from over 1 million people. One unnamed senator said, quote, this is the worst telecom hack in our nation's history by far. Alarmingly, after the cyber criminals were identified, they modified their tactics, which made locating and thwarting them more complicated. They reportedly still remain burrowed in some of the company's wiretap systems as recently as October, even after the public learned about the intrusion. During their time inside the networks, the intruders attempted to mimic systems engineers and then mask their activities in order to blend in. But authorities were eventually able to observe the hackers pass pilfered data around the world before pulling it into China. An FBI spokesperson said, we saw a massive set of data acquired. Now, Chinese officials, as is normally the case, have denied any culpability. They said that they were not a part of this. Quote, some in the U.S. seem to be enthusiastic about creating various types of typhoons. The U.S. needs to stop its own cyber attacks against other countries and refrain from using cybersecurity to smear and slander China. Meanwhile, AT&T insists that there currently is no evidence to suggest that foreign actors have penetrated its network, while Verizon claims it has contained the activities associated with this particular incident. Also, I don't want to say here we go again, folks. I'm not going to say it. That was the headline, though. China is now downplaying a new mystery virus that has caused death and claims it's safe. They claim it's safe to travel despite pandemic fears. Yes, you heard me right, pandemic fears. Now, unconfirmed local media reports from China are suggesting a new bug thought to be connected to the, I'm not even going to try. Well, why not? Why don't we try? Human metapneumovirus. It is now causing severe and even deadly results. Usually, HMPV is similar to a mild cold, but lines of sick children and adults are now overwhelming the country's healthcare system, and deaths have been reported. Now, this, of course, comes off the heel of what most believe was a lab, not most, I will say that some believe, was a lab, a breakout, if you will, of COVID-19. China has long been identified as the source for COVID-19. Now, whether or not, how you think that got there is open to interpretation, though I don't think it really is at the end of the day. Of course, that sparked a global pandemic. I don't see a scenario where we're back in lockdown, but something to kind of break the news this morning. Unconfirmed local media reports from China are suggesting a new bug and is now causing severe and even deadly results. So there are your updates this morning. Not on the most brightest note to start the broadcast. We do have quite a few New York issues. I'm not going to talk a lot about it, though you can if you want. The new congestion toll that took place started this week in New York City, causing quite an issue, to put it lightly, causing... Well, it's really a mess, if I'm going to boil it down. But we're not going to talk about that necessarily. We are going to talk about some state issues, as well as, obviously, today is a historic day, what some would call the greatest political comeback in history, which is the certification of the election of Donald J. Trump to be the next president of the United States. That is today. I have not heard of any issues surrounding that. I know there's been a few people in kind of the more fringe element of the far left calling for no certification. That should come as no surprise. But with, of course, the Congress and the Senate sworn in, it should go pretty smoothly today, and I'm sure we'll all be watching it very, very closely. What was your thoughts about the speaker's race? I thought it was very interesting. I didn't know you could just change your votes. I really didn't. Call me naive. I didn't know you could vote one way, and I was very discouraged when there was a handful of Republican congressmen who were right there. You can see them right on camera if you were watching C-SPAN or wherever you were watching it. Their name being called and just not voting. I think they thought, and I was reading some live updates at the time, and there were many thought that Speaker Johnson, maybe in a way to embarrass him, would have to go to them each and kind of grovel or beg for their vote, and then they can feel that they're in some type of power play position. That did not happen. It sounds like, to me, reading between the lines, it sounds to me as if Donald Trump made a few phone calls, put a little bit pressure, and there's others that agree with me on this, put a little pressure on these people. And again, other than Thomas Massie voting for Speaker Johnson, what a great speech that he gave as he was sworn in. Got emotional, as a matter of fact. We do have a couple of updates, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds on this, but about the New Orleans terrorist attack. There's criticism in some circles online, and I would say more far left circles, but they're linked on Drudge Report this morning about the Las Vegas Cybertruck explosion. They're suggesting, and I think it's quite the opposite, but that, quote, publications are sugarcoating Leibelsberger's political manifesto, that he made very political statements. I would argue the opposite is true, that many wanted to point to his political leanings right from the jump and make this some type of political attack. He did say some very radicalized things, but that has been widely reported. So the idea that, again, quote, why are publications sugarcoating Leibelsberger's political manifestos? Again, I think that has been a major highlight of the Las Vegas Cybertruck explosion. But when we come back, we're going to just talk quickly a couple updates on New Orleans. Then we are going to mention what's going on in New York State. I hope that you'll be a part of the program this morning. Thank you for joining us. Also on the program this morning, two things. We're going to tell you who was the winner of the Rockwell Museum's Gingerbread Challenge, the Gingerbread Invitational. We'll tell you who the winner was in case you went and saw that gingerbread competition and you wanted to know who won. We'll also be talking later on with Andy Petros. He is going to join us about his upcoming forum, if you will, over Zoom, coming up on January 8th at 6, and it's how to run for local public office. And this is a topic that we discuss so often on this program. There's also, and I'll bring it to you after our interview with Mr. Petros, which is Steuben County is holding a petition forum. So if you want to get involved, maybe run for office, maybe you've been seriously thinking about it. Well, if you are, and there's a lot of local elections coming up this year, if you are thinking about it, petitions start at the end of February. So you really have to make that decision quite quickly. Maybe attend this forum on the 8th, or if you're in Steuben County, go to that meeting on petitions. But maybe you say, I don't personally think I should run. Well, two things. If you think there's someone that you know that should run, have them watch that interview with Andy Petros today, or go to that forum, encourage them to go to that forum. Or I would also suggest get involved with the petition process. So if you know someone, you say, boy, my town council person or my legislator is doing a great job and I want to support them. Well, the best way to support them, and the one that probably gets the most thanks and the most pats on the back, is by taking out their petition. So we'll learn about that with Andy Petros here in a little bit, and you can learn for yourself at that forum that he is holding, or the Steuben County Forum, which I'll tell you more about when we come back. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
All of these are dangerous. But when you throw this into the mix, you're just adding fuel to the fire. Don't let your future go up in flames. Drugged driving is impaired driving.
Are you ready for winter in New York State? Ready for thrills like this? Discoveries like this? Views like this? Are you ready to make memories? Plan the perfect trip or have an impromptu getaway. It's time to explore everything that makes New York easy to love. Discover more at iloveny.com.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history. Look at the roof cam. The Frankly Speaking roof cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. That perfect view, thanks to engineer Chris, who waved to us the other day. We've got that back up and running and looking beautiful on historic Market Street in Corning as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. A couple comments from viewers. You're unbelievable. You knock New York City every time you get a chance. Do you realize New York City is part of New York State? I do realize that. I wasn't knocking them. Let me put this out to you. Are you defending the congestion pricing? If you are, I'd love to hear it. I've only heard negative, and that's not even coming from conservative outlets. It's just a huge cost, a huge tax, a huge burden to the people of New York City. So I would argue that I was actually speaking up for the residents of New York City. Though I will say here in just a little bit, if you're upset about criticism of New York State, buckle up, because we got some stories coming up here in just a little bit. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. Regarding the virus, do you know if it is mainly confined to the Northeast where all the drone sightings have taken place? It's actually confined, I should have been clear on that, in China as of right now. They say it's safe to travel to China, but the virus, this mystery virus that is causing deaths, is, as far as I'm aware, just confined to China at the time being. That's according to this piece by The Express. Another comment I think Massey, we were talking about Representative Massey. I like this. I think Massey is a gassy rogue. Okay, very poetic. Yeah, I think he likes the attention. He likes the showboat. He likes the grandstand. He wants people to come to him and beg for a vote. Wasn't necessary this time. But there's something to be said on the flip side of that coin, if we're playing devil's advocate. He was clear he wasn't going to change his vote, no matter what, even if he was tortured. And he stood by that. So whatever you think of that, I mean, at least he stuck with his position. Some of the others who switched their vote after Trump called them, well, you can judge them for that decision on your own. Okay, quickly on New Orleans, chilling video has shown the ISIS terrorist view of New Orleans because he was wearing Meta glasses, the Facebook Meta glasses, so they can actually see the view that he had as he was in preparation for this terrorist attack. We also learned that the FBI says he was killed before he could use the remote detonators because there was those talks of the explosive devices. He was wearing the same glasses when he rammed his rented truck down the famed street and killed 14 people and wounded a dozen others. And now the FBI says he could have killed even more people with IEDs he planted around the packed tourist district, but cops killed him before he could reach the remote detonator. We believe, quote, we believe the transmitter would have functioned and would have worked, but for New Orleans PD putting him down before he could get access to that transmitter and set off the devices, said Joshua Jackson, special agent in charge for the New Orleans Field Division. Investigators are working to uncover how Jabbar managed to make the bombs, which were built with a very rare explosive compound that had never been before used in terror attacks in the U.S. or Europe, according to NBC News. Officials did not say what the material was or how Jabbar, who had previously served in the military, was able to concoct these devices. Other newly released video shows Jabbar placing the bombs, which had been hidden in plastic coolers hours before the attack. Now, they had planned in New Orleans these new Bourbon Street barriers. When they put them out, well, there's been a lot of criticism. They're only crash rated for just 10 miles per hour. Months before the deadly New Orleans vehicle attack on New Year's Day, the city modeled scenarios for how an attacker could enter Bourbon Street at various intersections in a crew cab Ford F-150. Engineers found such a pickup could enter the crowded tourist strip at speeds ranging from 12 to 70 miles per hour, and yet city officials are now installing new street barriers that can only withstand 10 miles per hour of impact. These new barriers, known as bollards, had not yet been installed on Bourbon Street, but are planned to be completed by the Super Bowl on February 9th. The documents revealed by Reuters, which have not been previously reported, make clear that the system won't be able to prevent vehicle attacks at moderate to high speeds. Top GOP senators are now criticizing law enforcement failures by the FBI and other groups, calling on President-elect Trump's administration to enact reforms. On Meet the Press, John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, think that Americans have lost trust in the FBI. Senator Bill Cassidy also told Fox News Sunday that there needs to be consequences for law enforcement failures that allowed incidents like last week's terrorist attack in New Orleans. Quote, this is Thune now, the FBI is an agency that I think is in need of reform, and it needs a good makeover, so to speak, and probably a good amount of house cleaning when it comes to the perception the American people have of it and these institutions that the American people need to have confidence and trust in. He added that Trump's nominee to lead the FBI, Kash Patel, quote, understands that mission. And there has been a lot of criticism of the FBI, I don't know if you call it spokesperson, who originally said that it was not a terrorist attack. In no uncertain terms, it was not a terrorist attack. They are not commenting on if she is being reprimanded because of that, because it really took only moments later when I think Biden and others called it directly a terrorist attack. So why, some have speculated maybe for politically correct reasons, why she came out and said it was not a terrorist attack. Well, meanwhile, Cassidy reacted to the news that New Orleans police had access to 48 barriers that could have prevented last week's deadly truck attack. The permanent barriers blocking vehicle access to Bourbon Street were being replaced at the time of the attack, but authorities in the city could have deployed Archer barriers that are rated to stop a 5,500-pound vehicle going 60 miles per hour. Quote, there has to be leadership at the top, said Cassidy. And if the leadership failed, as you describe it, then absolutely there has to be consequences. Now, I think we're going to have a kind of complete review of everything from top to bottom. And that's the way it ends up shaking out completely. She should be replaced, referencing New Orleans Police Superintendent. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was FBI. My apologies. It was New Orleans Police Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick who originally said it was not a terrorist attack. Thune and Cassidy's statements come days after Trump allies exonerated the FBI for its initial characterization of the truck attack as not terror-related. Trump told Fox Digital on Thursday, quote, "The FBI has a no-fail mission. There is no room for error. When they fail, Americans die. It's a necessity that Kash Patel get confirmed ASAP." All right, so there's your updates. When we come back, we are going to be talking about New York State issues, specifically with Governor Hochul. We could talk more about the congestion pricing if you want. I know that is not going over well for many residents in the city. Already many looking for ways to avoid it. I think New Jersey residents were offered like a $3 discount on it, which they're looking at as more of an insult than an actual savings. But we're not going to talk much about that, but we are going to talk some New York State issues. We do have updates on the House. We'll talk a little bit about Speaker Johnson later on, also about Trump's cabinet picks. We also have quite a few stories here about Joe Biden as he, kind of goes off to the sunset. There's some criticism of him by Democrats. I don't know if you saw that Chuck Schumer was saying over the weekend, kind of denying his mental decline again. We'll talk about that as well. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, taunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September. I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, taunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
The Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We got a lot of comments coming in. Thank you to everybody joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. First comment. I agree they shouldn't be charging the $9, meaning the congestion toll in New York City. But you always laugh when talking about New York City. I guess that's a tick. I didn't know I did. No harm, no foul. I didn't mean anything by it if that's the case. Next up, lowering the crash rating, this is in regards to New Orleans, makes no sense. Maybe New Orleans should also consider using spike strips. Perhaps so. Another comment from a different viewer. During the press conference, the police chief or supervisor said it was a terrorist attack. It was the FBI field agent that said it wasn't. Okay, thank you. That was in question because there would have been no reason for the FBI to be involved if it wasn't. Thank you very much for that, for the clarification. So on to New York. And this is in regards to New York City and New York as well. The latest, and this is coming from Richie Torres. Now remember, Richie Torres He's a Democrat congressman representing the 15th district. He put together this op-ed, and it's at the New York Post. I'm not sure if it's elsewhere. The reason why it's important to mention him, there are thoughts, and he's made it pretty clear, that he will be primarying Governor Hochul, that he wants to run for governor, and that's why he's been very vocal, why he's been putting together numerous op-eds like this. But he raises a good point, and he said the latest announcement by Governor Hochul that she will finally expand involuntary commitment, meaning, if someone's on the street that they can, that has some maybe mental health issues, some drug abuse issues, that they can put them in jail or put them in a safe place involuntarily, essentially, is a necessity, he says, but insufficient condition for public safety in New York. But the governor must be even bolder and go even further in protecting the people of New York from the violent crime surge unfolding on the streets and in the subways. The subway system saw the highest number of homicides in 27 years. And she continues to take selfies and things like that in the subway and say how safe they are. Statistics only tell part of the story. No numbers can capture the gruesome act of setting a strap hanger on fire and the sheer terror it strikes in the heart of New Yorkers. After weeks of declaring mission accomplished and taking subway selfies, Governor Hochul finally agreed to pursue the urgently needed policy changes that I have championed. This again, Richie Torres, who is most likely going to face Governor Hochul in the primary. Expanding involuntary commitment so that the mayor has the authority he needs to relocate dangerous people from the subways and the streets of New York. And he gives some specific examples, but for far too long, he said, the broken system in Albany has chosen gaslighting over governing. Well, he doesn't really sound like a Democrat here, does he? But he's right. Obviously, the one-party control in Albany has created a scenario that we talk about so often on this program, which is coddling criminals and tying the hands of law enforcement, whether it's bail reform, whether now the expansion of involuntary commitment. But this is Governor Hochul, again, trying to suggest or trying to convince you that she is all about public safety when historically, of course, we've seen the uptick in violence and destruction, and unfortunately, all the scenarios where there's victims out there that did not need to be victims due to bail reform. I read an article where someone involved in a stabbing in the subway had been arrested something like 20 times before or something. The number doesn't stick specifically, but that was another example. It was right on Empire Report, and that's unfortunately a common story, if you will. That's more common than not. I was going to see if I could find it right here. It looks like they updated, so nope, I'm not going to be able to. Oh, yeah, here we go. Homeless man. Oh, no, I'm sorry. 20 was really lowballing that figure. Homeless man with more than 80 prior arrests arrested for subway stabbing. So continuing with what Richie Torres had to say. No need to worry about open-air drug markets. Well, let me take a step back. There's no need to worry about New York, the political establishment tells us. No need to worry about the open-air drug markets on the streets. No need to worry about sudden stabbings, slashings, and shovings on the subway. No need to worry about fewer and fewer retail stores with more and more products locked inside cases. No need to worry at all. Just ignore your lying eyes. Except our lying eyes have not been the ones lying to us. It has been the governor's gaslighting and the broken system that she leads. Now, again, you could tell he wants to run for governor. I mean, he is sounding like a conservative Republican. This is Richie Torres, Democrat congressperson, who is going to most likely challenge Hochul in the primary. And again, he gives specific cases of this. I don't think we need to go through that, though you're more than willing, if you want to, go on New York Post and read the whole piece for yourself. But the legacy of these well-intentioned social experiments has been a criminal justice system that far too often put its thumbs on the scale not in favor of the victims of crime, but in favor of the criminals themselves. Most erroneous of all, New York may be the only state, an outrageous outlier, that prohibits judges from considering public safety risk when setting bail. And that's a topic that we have discussed ad nauseum here on this program with Senator Phil Palmisano, Sheriff Allard, Sheriff Schramm, Tom O'Mara, Chris Friend. The governor should propose legislation via the budget that empowers judges to consider public risk, which is a matter of common sense. If the issue of public safety risks were presented to voters via a referendum, it would win the support of 80% of New Yorkers across every demographic. But in Albany, where the far left commands veto power over the rest of us, 80% issues are dead on arrival. Common sense, which commands a broadcast consensus, and constituency among New Yorkers should be the rule of governing in New York State, and nowhere more so than on matters of life and death. So Democrat Congressman Richie Torres sounding very much like a conservative Republican there, even criticizing his Democrat friends, essentially, in Albany. Whew. Yeah, he's definitely running. Well, we know it worked great for Lee Zeldin as a Republican. I mean, granted, he didn't win, but when you look at the numbers, making huge strides in New York as a Republican, nearly beating Governor Hochul. So imagine Richie Torres, who was a Democrat that will be primarying Hochul, says, okay, if I can jump on the public safety bandwagon, show that I am as strong on public safety as a Lee Zeldin or as Republicans or as the people of New York are, that will give him the upper hand. And you'll start to see Governor Hochul, I'm sure, try to address public safety, but in a manner that really has no teeth, like we saw with the bail reform. But now Governor Hochul is facing a critical 2025. This is a very important year for her as the election looms for her, where you have Richie Torres, most likely going to be a primary challenge. Mike Lawler looks like to be one of the people on the Republican side considering running for governor. On January 1st, Governor Hochul boasted about the state's first in the nation prenatal paid leave for mothers, an increase in the state's minimum wage, and plans to send millions of inflation-zapped New Yorkers checks for up to $500 this fall. She had similarly highlighted drops in violent crime. But again, to Richie Torres' point, it's one of those things, never mind what you're seeing with your eyes, trust us in Albany. But new laws to protect children from social media algorithms, affordable housing, and efforts to address an affordability crisis. But as Hochul faces re-election next year in 2026, polls consistently show she is selling a message that a large sampling of New Yorkers apparently do not believe, raising the question of why and what, if anything, she can do to turn the public in her favor. Stephen Greenberg, who operates Siena College, the polling there, said she has failed to connect with voters in a meaningful way. I don't know why, but I know that there is a disconnect between the governor and her constituents. Well, I think one of the main reasons is when you're told time and time again that there isn't a public safety issue and you see it. Heaven forbid you've experienced it. Or let's face it, let's boil it right down. Let's get to the brass tacks. When Governor Hochul said that if you vote Republican, which as we see, there's a lot more Republicans in New York than we originally realized after the presidential election. If you vote Republican, you are anti-American and anti-women. Is that the kind of rhetoric that you should spew to get your constituents to like you? And I don't want to go through the various data. We know her polling numbers are not good. That's why I think you see Richie Torres seeing an opportunity there. She has, Jeremy Zellner, the Erie County Democrat Committee chair, said she has done unprecedented work in rebuilding our state party with fundraising and recapturing all but one of the congressional seats lost in 2022. Especially with the chaos we expect to see in Washington under the new Trump administration, I believe Governor Hochul will be in a very strong position for re-election in 2026. It's always a mistake to underestimate Kathy Hochul. So your thoughts on that? Finally, as she does look towards her re-election in 2026, we know that Governor Hochul is perhaps New York's biggest climate change booster, right? Making these decisions such as EVs in the schools, the super climate change super fund, $75 billion, basically a tax on businesses with fossil fuel, even though they follow the rules and did everything that the DEC demanded of them. Now kind of retrofitting a tax of $75 billion, which of course just sends another message to businesses not to come to New York State. Well, Governor Hochul, New York's biggest climate change booster, has spent $415,000 on private jets. She's talking a tough line on fossil fuels, except the ones she's spewing. Governor Hochul, who recently approved a controversial law that will force oil, natural gas, and coal companies to pony up $75 billion for carbon emissions, which she alleges contributes to global warming, has taken at least 30 flights aboard private jets since 2021, according to the Board of Elections. Quote, the $415,000 tab was picked up by her campaign committee. Quote, it's very wasteful, especially for an elected official. There is no reason why any elected official in New York should be taking a private jet. Nearly everywhere in New York or upstate has a commercial airport that will take you anywhere in the country. New York is one of the most well-connected places on the planet, said a local pilot. Hochul flew with 2 private airline companies. We don't need to know all that. But so $415,000 on a private jet. Now, a medium private a medium-sized private jet from Albany to New York City would burn about 320 gallons of fuel, about 55 times more than a car. The majority of flights took place in 2022 when Hochul was in the midst of her nail-biter re-election campaign against Lee Zeldin. But Hochul's official schedule offered few clues about her actual whereabouts. So private flights, a little bit of a do as I say, not as I do, a little bit of maybe you could go as far as saying hypocrisy. But we've got to take a short break. When we come back, more of your comments. We've got a few things here about the Biden administration as it winds down. We'll be talking about that as well. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. Hesselson's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselson's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselson's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselson's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Heather and I had an argument just like any other couple. I was lost and lonely. I had snapped. I had a gun and I was going to take my own life. Heather helped me realize that there was still life to live for the better of myself, my family. My weapon is now safely put away.
My son, Ricky, took his life by the use of a firearm. It broke me in ways that I never knew that I could be broken. And I contemplated suicide. Afterwards, we found out his girlfriend, she was pregnant. If that was my grandson, I was gonna have to be here for him. I still own my firearm. I keep it in a safe because I want to keep my grandson and myself safe.
A moment of crisis can happen to anyone.
Store your gun securely, locked, unloaded, and away from ammo.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Our beautiful view of historic Market Street in the Gafford District as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio on said street. Wow, a lot of comments coming in. Thank you for the comments this morning. Let's go right to them. First comment. Sounds like Richie Torres, will get RFK Jr.'d. Yeah, he does. I want to be crystal clear here. That was a very tough-talking op-ed. I believe he is more liberal than he has been letting on as he prepares to run for governor. But I understand what you're saying. Hochul is a Democrat puppet. The media and Democrat Party will eliminate his possibility of primarying Hochul. Interesting point. And get him removed from ballots. Wasn't that already proven to be the route that they will take? Yeah, it could very well be. I mean, there's still plenty of time between now and election. It's a year from, it's essentially 2 years from now. But if he continues to do that, continues to be the champion of public safety, she's got a fight on her hands. So yes, we could see some shenanigans behind the scenes. Next up, a different comment, obviously, from a different viewer. I think possibly flying by private jet is more of a security issue for her. I can imagine other passengers harassing her. That could be the case if they recognize her. Honestly, I don't think she's the big power player that she believes she is. I mean, first of all, that speech at the DNC where she flubbed at the beginning, it was just not a prime time speech. I don't think she's some star in the Democrat Party. I think a lot of people would not even recognize her as governor of New York, honestly. But I think you have a good point there. Next up, different comment. Either Joe or Phil, meaning either Joe Sempolinski, former congressman, Assemblyman-elect, I think he is Assemblyman now, Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski, or Assemblyman Phil Palmisano should run for governor of New York State. I agree, and I'll make sure to continue to encourage them. I have made that point to them directly because of the great comments that you send in, and they both skirted the issue. But I agree with you, viewer. Thank you very much. And we're going to have both Joe Sempolinski. This is a busy time for him, obviously, as he's getting sworn in and learning the ropes in the assembly. And we'll have Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, both of them in very soon. I'll get on the phone with them maybe even later today so we can get something scheduled for the upcoming weeks. I just want to mention this quickly because we were talking about New York. This is not a New York article, but we could definitely see this beginning in New York State because we are so soft on crime and there's a Clean Slate Act and those type of things. Well, in Oregon, a wave of local publications, newspapers and the like, are considering requests to wipe or edit old articles to give their subjects a fresh start. So what these newspapers are doing are deleting old crime stories, offering the subjects, the people that were involved in the crime, a, quote, clean slate. So again, interesting choice of words there. Civil rights advocates across the U.S. have long fought to free people from their criminal records with campaigns to expunge old cases and keep people's past arrests private when they apply for jobs and housing. Well, they don't even need to do that in New York. What we did is make it so your felonies and your certain crimes are wiped away from record. So when you apply for a job, you can essentially, or try to get an apartment or whatever the case may be, you don't have to tell your criminal background after a certain point, which you can see a lot of red flags and a lot of concerning issues with that. Now, people said, well, this will give business people a bigger pool of people to select from. Well, then that's fine. If they want to hire those people with the criminal records, that's fine. But they should also know that there are the criminal records there. So instead of going through the publications and newspapers, we here in New York said, no, we're just going to erase it off your record so that you can get that job. The efforts are critical as more than 70 million Americans have prior convictions or arrests, roughly 1 in 3 adults. Wow. But the policies haven't addressed one of the most damaging ways past run-ins with police can derail people's lives: old media coverage. Some newsrooms are working to fill that gap. A handful of local newspapers across the U.S. have in recent years launched programs to review their archives and consider requests to remove names or delete old stories to protect the privacy of subjects involved in minor crimes. There we go. All right. We got to take a break. When we come back, this is a question that we've posed on the show numerous times. Do you believe with the election of Donald Trump that it is officially the end of the Obama era? We brought this up right after the election. There's people like even David Axelrod who would tend to agree, saying that they need fresh blood. There was the criticism of Nancy Pelosi stopping AOC for moving up, that kind of fresh blood, new blood idea, newer ideas. But according to Julian Epstein, the end of the Obama era has officially arrived, with a deep sense of betrayal among Democrat voters. So there is some soul searching going on. I don't think strong enough. If you look at Schumer, he's saying they have to look at the mistakes that they made, but then he goes on to defend his essentially keeping Biden's cognitive decline secret. So we're going to talk about that as well. But we have to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Football's newest show breaks down all things NFL. GMFB Overtime.
Check out top highlights, player interviews, special guests, and everything in between. 5 days a week.
GMFB Overtime. It's football for everyone.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, taunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
It's a new season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my #1 goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got a lot of comments coming in as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. First up, comment from a viewer. Frank, it was so cold this morning, I saw a Democrat with his hands in his own pockets. Thank you very much, viewer. Next up, a comment from a different viewer. Just a thought that for some unknown reason popped into my head. Whatever happened to the crazy and selfish super mayor? Oh, you mean Tiffany Henyard? If you're new to the program, we bring up the Illinois mayor. She's Dolton super mayor, self-referred to as super mayor. We bring her up quite frequently because it's a perfect example of why it's so important. And I'm glad that you brought this up, viewer, because we're going to be talking to Andy Petros about running for local office later on. But why it's so important to know who you're voting for at the local level, not to just always focus on, and I know it's fun to focus on the national scene and the congressional races and the Senate races and the governor's races, but the ones that affect your day-to-day life the most, are the local races. So, having said that, I had not heard a lot from Tiffany Henyard in a while, so I looked it up during break. We know that she lost her town supervisor nomination in that caucus. She called it voter suppression, something like that. But she is still mayor. We know that she has already announced that she's going to run for re-election. But I just saw this. This is a kind of breaking news from Friday. Thornton Township has now stopped their services for senior citizens because there is a government shutdown there. The government there in Thornton Township, where she is a supervisor, the government there remains shut down over disagreements between Supervisor Tiffany Henyard and two township trustees. I don't think this is a surprise. We know, is that coming through? Nope. We know that she has been fighting. As a matter of fact, they went from a surplus to a deficit, significant deficit, almost as soon as Henyard took over. Then we know they voted to do an audit on the finances, see where it went, what happened, and she vetoed that audit, which probably should be a red flag. So thank you for bringing her up. That's a prime example of why it's so important to know who you're voting for at the local level. Now, obviously, that's not someone we can vote for one way or the other, but it's still a kind of the poster child, if you will, for why local elections matter. So the question, the question I asked, but Julian Epstein believes is already answered, which is the end of the Obama era has officially arrived. There's a deep sense of betrayal among Democrat voters, an underlining realization that the Democrat Party's Politburo, Obama, Pelosi, Schumer, Jeffries, and their quarters of elected officials and consultant sycophants sold voters a bill of goods and gaslighting of the public on President Biden's decrepitude, the false idol of the Kamala Harris campaign of joy as a smart last-minute stand-in, and the repeated cowering to the far left whose wokeness and moral condescension turns off most voters. And you heard that from Bill Maher recently, who is a Democrat, saying these woke policies are destroying the party. They're not focusing, and that's why so many working class people turned from Democrats to Republicans, because they realized Republicans were fighting for them when Democrats were focused on these kind of DEI issues, if you will. In a just world, one might expect a formal no confidence vote on this leadership failure from Obama, Pelosi, Schumer, Jeffries, and others. After all, this is what they let me try that again. After all, this is the kind of recall we see with Western European heads of state and House speakership races and soon in Canada. The recall may not happen, but the undeniable trouncing may signal the end of what we can call the Obama era. Simply put, the Obama era is characterized by a set of ideas and tactics directly linked to the Democrats' loss. The first is the demography is destiny delusion, a kind of manifest destiny of the left, adopted in the second Obama term, that promises an ever-diversifying electorate would vote Democrat and must therefore be patronized with cartoonish appeals to identity and big government wardship. This proved to be not only deeply un-American, but politically foolish. And I'm not going to go through the specifics on this, but do you believe that this is the end of the Obama era as we know it? Such as validating the rhetoric of pro-Hamas activists, was supposed to buy votes in Dearborn, and the anti-Israel and often anti-Semitic left. Democrats ignored all the polls warning against these identity politics, which never had broad voter support, including among black and brown Americans, but it was too late to turn back. Former New York Times reporter David Samuels chronicles how the Obama White House conceived and perfected the strategy of using affiliate left-wing public intellectuals to sell often false or misleading narratives to mainstream news and political elites on, say, the deeply defective Iranian nuclear deal, and then to quell dissent with cancel tactics. Samuels describes an Orwellian machinery spinning an invented reality that could be successfully messaged and managed from the Obama White House. The mainstream media has been its own worst enemy, as this third pillar of the Obama era also appears to be in self-destruction mode. Finally, Israel's stunning success in decapitating Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran's Arc of Terror has laid ridicule to Obama's second-term central policy goal of Iranian appeasement, bought with pallets of cash from the U.S. Then, together with Obama's red line bluff on Syria's chemical gas use, his backing down to Putin on the annexation of Crimea, Biden's buffoonish Afghanistan withdrawal, buffoonish isn't a strong enough word, but again, this is Julian Epstein, who's a former Democratic chief counsel to the House Judiciary Committee. All of these things and more have left the Democrats looking weak and incompetent. Not just the voters, but the world's worst actors. Barack Obama was an immensely talented and often inspiring historic figure with his campaign of hope and change. But the politics and cultural offspring of his White House, that even he himself was often unable to contain, has helped lead the party to a truly dark and defeated corner. And that's why Chuck Schumer and others, and we're going to talk about this in just a moment, Chuck Schumer and others are saying that they've got to do some soul searching, but then you got to put your money where your mouth is, because you're not seeing it in the rhetoric. You're not seeing it in what they're saying on the Sunday interviews. Got a comment from a viewer. Rest in peace, Obama era. Good riddance. Thank you very much. Do you think it is the end? I don't know if it is or not. I would say one of the major changes that I thought was going to happen after Hillary Clinton's loss is that they wouldn't depend so much on celebrity endorsements, for instance. And that wasn't the case. As a matter of fact, we learned now that Kamala Harris was actually paying for some of these celebrity endorsements. So there's little things like that I just don't think they've learned their lessons from the Obama era. And I'm not fully convinced that that era is through. But I would love to hear your take on it. But we have to take a short break and wrap up hour number one. Unbelievable. We got one last segment in hour number one that will be kicking off hour number two. As I said, Andy Petros will be our guest, former Chemung County legislator. He's got an upcoming forum on how to run for local election. If you're not interested in running for local election, but you think there's somebody that'd be great at it, make sure they catch this interview and make sure they participate in that forum or the class that they'll be offering in Steuben County, which I'll tell you about after our interview with Mr. Petros. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
When you think boots, think Hesselson's. Hesselson's has the largest selection of work boots in the area. Composite and steel-toe boots, Met-Guard boots, soft-toe boots, and hikers, duty and western boots, all in one location. Hesselson's, Amara Heights. Hesselson's has men's and ladies' boots in all sizes and widths. Choose from the largest names in the industry: Danner, Carolina, Timberland Pro, Keene Utility, Thorogood, Area, and Georgia, to name just a few. Hesselson's has been locally owned and operated since 1955, so when you think local service and great selection, think Hesselson's. Remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Are you ready for winter in New York State? Ready for thrills like this? Discoveries like this? Views like this? Are you ready to make memories? Plan the perfect trip or have an impromptu getaway. It's time to explore everything that makes New York easy to love. Discover more at iloveny.com.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history making. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Give them a call today for all your business and home security needs, as we see that beautiful view of Market Street. Back at it in that perfect angle. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Thank you for joining us this morning. So as we had mentioned, and we're going to talk more about this in the next hour. We're just wrapping up hour number one. About the kind of the soul searching by the Democrat parties. Chuck Schumer says Democrats must look in the mirror after losing the White House And in the Senate, quote, we did some things wrong. He was on Meet the Press over the weekend saying, I told my caucus, and I'll say it here too, certainly it was a loss, but it's also a challenge. Now, some, just to show you that they're not completely doing the soul searching, some are now trying to claim, well, it wasn't as big a loss as we originally thought, that it's really not that bad for Democrats, trying to put that spin on it. When we know, in fact, it was a landslide election, giving Trump not just, the most important thing, which is the electoral college vote, but also the popular vote, which, again, not necessarily in the scheme of things, but also shows that mandate. Continuing, Schumer said Democrats face severe headwinds to win 4 of 7 contested Democrat Senate seats, though conceded that we, quote, did some things wrong, and we have to look in the mirror and see what we did. Just by saying some things makes me think that they're not really going to look in the mirror. Schumer said there are some things we didn't do that we should have done, such as focusing on working families in America. Well, also, I would argue that maybe not ridiculing people that are struggling to get by, because that became the talking point from the left, and especially those in the media, trying to push that the economy's not that bad. And then when they do a man on the street interview and that person says, I can barely keep groceries on my table, I can't feed my family, they'd mock them and ridicule them and say, well, look at these stats that we got from a bureaucrat that shows that you're actually doing amazing and you don't even know it. Maybe that's one place you could look, Senator Schumer. The failing made working families not realize how much we have done. So it's always questioning your intelligence. That's another way that they handle the economy, that you just didn't get their talking points. You just didn't get their narrative. We're going to talk more about this when we come back, but I just looked at the clock and we are out of time for hour number 1. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, we will be right back.
I'm Marianne Crawford. I've lived here for 70 years, but I do fine right here in my house, and I want to be here as long as I can be. And I feel comfortable knowing that if something happened to me, someone would know because of the cameras that are installed in various spots in my home. That has been a wonderful gift to me, to be able to have that security and that support from Full Circle America, and that's what it's all about.
And Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right.
And welcome back. It's hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, thank you so much for joining us this morning. As I had mentioned, in a little bit, we'll be talking with Andy Petros about how you can get involved and run for local office. I also wanted to make the announcement because our friend Willa Vogel was on the program a couple weeks ago talking about the Gingerbread Invitational at the Rockwell Museum. Well, they declared their winner. So if you were able to attend and you voted, well, the community choice winner is, quote, It's All in the Littlest Things. That was the name of it. And that was by Julie Pascal and Christina Nerzinski. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Now, that is actually, if you're wondering, it's a very beautiful gingerbread house. This is their 3rd time winning, this team, out of 10 years. So very impressive. Congratulations to the winners of the Community Choice Award at the Rockwell Museum. It's all the little things. Okay, so we had mentioned Chuck Schumer talking about taking a look at the Democrat Party, and he said this failing, meaning that they couldn't push kind of a propaganda type message, made working families not, quote, realize how much we have done and how much we care for them. So you were, just like you weren't able to grasp or comprehend that the economy is doing really, really great, you were not able to hear their message enough, which was that they care about you. So you didn't even get that. You didn't even get that they cared about you. But just to show you that he hasn't learned, he now denies that Democrats misled the public on Joe Biden's cognitive decline. On Meet the Press, he said, look, we didn't. When asked about Americans who felt he and other top Democrats weren't forthcoming about Biden's mental acuity. Quote, let's look at President Biden. He had an amazing record. The legislation we passed, one of the most significant groups of legislation since the New Deal, since Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, putting in 235 judges, a record, he continued. He's a patriot, meaning Joe Biden. He's a great guy. And when he stepped down, he did it on his own because he thought it was better, not only for the Democrat Party, but for America. We should all salute him. That is to ignore the fact, Nancy Pelosi has all but taken credit for ousting him for that coup. Saying I did what I had to do. So now this is an example. I think the term gaslighting is used too often, but this is trying to rewrite history, trying to convince you that they never. Chuck Schumer was saying that it was a right-wing conspiracy that Biden was in, had some type of cognitive decline. So they did everything they could to prop him up for 3.5 years, and now they want to blame him for not getting out early enough. That's how dirty politics are. Imagine someone's telling you for 3.5 years that you're great, you're going to do great for another 4 years, and everybody's doing it, in the media, everybody around you. Then one day the coup happens and you're out. You must be pretty shocked if you're Joe Biden. And then you're getting blamed for it. For years, prominent Democrats had repeatedly shot down consternation about Biden's age and mental acuity. Last February, for instance, Schumer was adamant that Biden's acuity was great and decried any suggestion to the contrary as, and I quote, right-wing propaganda. Last spring, the White House also began pushing back against what it dubbed cheap fakes, viral videos showing Biden gaffing and appearing out of it. Then Biden had a fumbling June debate, and then the rest was history. In private, Schumer met with and nudged Biden to throw in the towel. ABC News reported at the time. Schumer has been very tight-lipped about his conversation with Biden. Nancy, not so much. She kind of liked the attention. She said she did what she had to do. She was trying to be like the godfather in a way. That came back to bite her. Now she's blaming Biden, even though she was taking credit for ousting him. So Schumer, on the other hand, has been very quiet. Now we know that Nancy Pelosi and Biden no longer have a relationship unless something changed, but Biden feels that he was stabbed in the back by her. She admitting that they had not had conversations. Now, if you watched it was the Al Smith dinner where Trump, that's where they have that kind of comedy routine. Harris didn't attend, first time since Mondale, I think, where a presidential candidate hadn't attended. She didn't attend, but Trump did. And one of the points that he made numerous times during that dinner was that Chuck Schumer, that's the guy that took out Biden. He kept pointing to him. I know Chuck, and he's the one that did it. He kept saying, and Chuck just smiled and shook his head. But Trump does know Schumer, so there may be something there. While Schumer touted Biden's accomplishments, he avoided answering whether he believed the lame duck president could carry out another 4 years as commander-in-chief. He said, I'm not going to speculate. As I said, I think his record is a stellar one. He'll go down in history as a really outstanding president. Another bit of rewriting history. Obviously, with his legacy out the door, you saw undoubtedly, well, we'll talk about it in a minute, but the Medal of Freedom awards. But we talked about the mechanics of the legislation and details of the legislation, and we really didn't show the kind of empathy and concern to the average, or show enough of it to average working families who didn't realize how much we had done and how much we care for them. That was the full quote that I wanted to read to you. Why they didn't win is because you just didn't understand how great they were. That's according to Chuck Schumer, our senator here in New York State. Even the Huffington Post is reporting on the fact that he denies misleading the public about Biden's decline, despite watching proof on the air. And that's coming from the Huffington Post, far left Huffington Post, even criticizing him, because I think many people saw people that propped him up for so long then turning on him, which caused the ultimate problem, which led to their loss. Now, Biden, and as I mentioned, there's a few things out the door that he is doing that are really making people upset, whether it's the pardoning of his son or whether it's commuting the sentences of the 37 of 40 people on death row. Now we see that he awarded the Medal of Freedom And I noticed most media outlets ignore that one of the recipients of the Medal of Freedom was George Soros. I was actually watching coverage this morning as I was getting ready for work. And they, out of the 19 people that received the award, they probably skipped about 5 or 6 of them. One of the, I think the most glaring ones that they didn't mention was George Soros. But President Biden named 19 Presidential Medal of Freedom recipients on Saturday, awarding the nation's highest civilian honor to political luminaries such as Hillary Clinton, the late civil rights pioneer Fannie Lou Hamer. Also on the list were Ann Winter, is that how you say that? And designer Ralph Lauren. Those chosen for the honor are people, quote, who have made extraordinary contributions to their country and the world, the White House said. The honor is usually an opportunity for the White House to herald people and values that the president sees as particularly significant. Former U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, the father of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., whom President-elect Trump has nominated to be as Secretary of Health and Human Services, was posthumously, I never remember how to say that, awarded the medal. Same with Mitt Romney's father, posthumously awarded the medal. Philanthropist and Democratic donor George Soros was also among, I like that, philanthropist, Democrat mega donor is what he is. He's done a lot of damage in the country with some of the, getting far left DAs and judges and the like. Also Jane Goodall, Michael J. Fox, Denzel Washington, Bill Nye the Science Guy, whose really only claim to science is that his name rhymes in that way, Bill Nye the Science Guy. He could do that. But he's been very active in pushing global warming. We know that. Magic Johnson got it. Spanish chef, why am I saying that? Jose Andres, whose World Central Kitchen travels to conflict zones and areas hit by natural disasters. Other people, Defense Secretary Ashton Carter, George W. Romney, the former Michigan governor and father of recently retired Utah Senator Mitt Romney, who was in attendance at the event. So a lot of people are outraged over this, the awarding of this. Soccer legend Lionel Messi was awarded the Medal of Freedom on Saturday, but did not show up to the White House in person. Neither did George Soros. I believe his son took the medal for him. According to Messi's management team and his pro team, Inter Miami, they informed the White House ahead of time that he had a scheduling conflict. Okay. A lot of focus there on that. Critics pointed out Clinton's handling of the war in Libya, why she would receive the Medal of Freedom, and the attack on the United States government facilities in Benghazi, Libya, as well as her controversial private email server for government business, which prompted James Comey to say publicly that Clinton had mishandled classified information. And the award to Soros, a Democrat mega donor, was slammed based on the billionaire's past campaign funding of progressive district attorneys who have been light on crime, which they say has led to crime waves in blue cities. Quote, seriously, two of the worst people on earth, said Blake Haben, an online commentator. So there you are. What are your thoughts about none other than George Soros receiving the Medal of Freedom? Really does not come as a surprise. But think of all the outrage when Trump awarded the Medal of Freedom to Rush Limbaugh. And the media lost their minds over that. Democrats lost their minds over that. But again, a lot of the reporting that you see after the fact on the ceremony would not even mention Democrat mega donor, George Soros. I just looked at the time. We got to take a short break. We've got a few other things to get your opinion on when it comes to Joe Biden. I'd love to hear your take on Mike Johnson and how that all went down on Friday. Now, today is a historic day, folks. If you're just joining us, arguably the biggest comeback it's not even that arguable, but in political history. Donald J. Trump, the election will be certified today. That is even CNN admitting this morning on their headlines on their front page that it is a historic day, as it is the greatest political comeback in history. That is happening today. We'll be watching that. Your thoughts on Mike Johnson? I do like that Trump got involved over the weekend on some of the Sunday shows. Some Republicans admitting to that. GOP Senator Banks said Mike Johnson is Speaker of the House because Trump, quote, weighed in. Your thoughts on that as well. But we got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver. And we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
Name something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Sharing the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big 5.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go through a couple of viewer comments, shall we? Well, originally this was off topic, but we ended up talking about it since this came in, so thank you. What did Hillary Clinton do to deserve the highest civilian honor that Biden gave her? I know. Great question. Another comment from a different viewer. These medals are a smack in the face of Americans for putting Soros and Hillary. Just shows you how low he will go before he leaves office. That's a very good point that you raised, because there's actually editorial that we may get to later on and get your opinion on from the New York Post. It says, as Biden and company leave, they're doing their best to trash the country they claim to serve. Another comment, and this one coming from Ken. Thanks for writing in, Ken. The honor of receiving the Medal of Freedom has been diminished over the years by presidents on both sides of the aisle. By giving it to actors and athletes that may have done some good work for some people, but nothing that would have risen to the level of deserving that medal. Biden's handlers have further diminished the honor by awarding it to people as payback for major donations, like George Soros, and to Hillary Clinton, who thinks that more than half of the country, or half the people in the country, are deplorable. Well, Hillary thinks that, but doesn't Biden think the same? Biden called us garbage, called Trump voters garbage. So that's a very good point. Speaking of Biden, and we could talk more about the Medal of Freedom. Pretty much stated the news there. There's not much more to report on, but be happy to talk more about it. But did you see Biden scolding the reporters? I always find this interesting because you have reporters that try to prop him up for so long, try to get him through re-election, et cetera, et cetera. But he was so quick to turn on them if he receives a difficult question. He gets very angry. And I'm not saying difficult as in unfair or biased. I'm just saying a question that the President of the United States should answer. Well, Fox News' Lucas Tomlinson reported that after signing the Social Security Fairness Act, Biden took a few questions from the crowd, which led the president to target President-elect Donald Trump. And he's been doing this a lot. He did it, unfortunately, he saw it as an opportunity with the passing of former President Jimmy Carter to take a dig at Trump too, which many called very inappropriate. But he was asked a question, do you believe he, meaning Donald Trump, is a threat to democracy? Do you still believe he's a threat to democracy? Biden responded, I think what he did was a genuine threat to democracy. After responding to the allegations that Trump plans to end birthright citizenship, Biden switched the topic to attack the reporters. I got to be careful because he cussed. I might be the oldest president, but I know more world leaders than any of you have ever met in your whole blank life. I don't even want to, I'm not even going to try. It's a cuss word. I'm not going to say on the air. I might be now what is this in response to? Where does this anger come from? I might be the oldest president, but I know more world leaders than any of you have ever met in your whole blank life. What many people calling him a bitter person after this. And that's kind of a weird, weird way to attack somebody too. Like, I'm smarter than you, or I know more world leaders than you. What a weird, kind of almost petty way to respond. Red State writer Bonchi wrote, "This is Washington's credentialism in a nutshell. Politicians become qualified by simply existing. It doesn't matter that Biden is an abject failure and the worst foreign policy figure in American history. You see, he knows a lot of people, and that's all that matters." Now, again, this isn't the first time he's mocked reporters. In November, he mocked a reporter asking him whether he could broker a hostage deal between Hamas and Israel. President Biden, do you think you can get a hostage deal by the end of your term? Where she responded, do you think you could keep from getting hit in the head by a camera behind you? And there's numerous examples of this. But he knows more world leaders than those reporters will ever know in their whole life, or even meet in their whole life. And he didn't just say life. We'll put it that way. Now, on that note, Biden, in a kind of a breaking story here, Biden will be giving 2 major speeches in the final days in office. Now, again, today is a historic day. President-elect Donald Trump, the election will be certified. Then on the 20th is Inauguration Day. That's with all the fanfare. But today's a very major day as the election is certified by Congress. Now, my question for you, and so far we haven't heard from anybody on this. I'm kind of surprised. Do you plan on attending the inauguration? I know a lot of people look forward to that on both sides of the aisle, depending on who wins. In the past, I would have a correspondent there in radio, but it didn't make sense because this show was so early and the inauguration isn't until, I think, noon. But do you plan on attending? I know that is quite a, well, there are some people that are concerned with obviously recent public safety issues, but I would love to hear from you. And if you are planning to attend, I would love to hear after the fact how it all went. But back to Biden, he is going to deliver 2 major speeches in his final days in office. The first speech is set to focus on foreign policy and is expected to be delivered sometime after Biden returns on January 12th from a trip to Italy. They said Biden then plans to close out his final days in the White House with a farewell address to the country. That should probably come as no surprise. It'll be interesting to see how he tries to rewrite his history of what happened in those 4 years as president. As Michael Goodwin writes, and we might get to this a little bit later on in the program, Joe Biden is using every trick in the book to wipe away the big stink from his tenure, but nothing is working. Michael Goodwin even suggesting that maybe he will step down and make Harris, on his last final days, make Harris the president so that she can be a part of history, being the first female president and kind of making one last big gesture. I don't know about that, but we'll talk about it in a little bit, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But neither speech has been fully drafted, the sources familiar with the president's plans have said, but the contours and themes of both have been developed. Now, do you think in the farewell address that he'll take the high road and call for unity and those type of things? Remember, coming off an election that saw him call Trump supporters, which we now know is a very big number, garbage. So will he call for unity? Will he use it as an opportunity to take a dig at the incoming president? The traditional address is expected to channel a similar spirit to the parting sentiments offered by some of Biden's recent predecessors, including George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, who delivered their farewell speeches from the White House, and Barack Obama, who opted to speak to the nation from his hometown of Chicago in front of a large audience of supporters. After losing the election, President-elect Donald Trump posted a pre-recorded video message online the day before Biden was sworn into office. So there is a quick update. We'll keep an eye on those speeches. We do have to take a break because we have Andy Petros coming in to join us. In full disclosure, this interview has been pre-recorded, and the only reason I'm telling you that is because I didn't want you to think I put my Christmas decorations back up just for Mr. Petros. He recorded this about a week ago because of the way the media works this time of year with the holidays. I wanted to make sure that we gave him the best possible time, and that is this week as compared to the holiday weeks before it. So he will be joining us here in just a few minutes after this short break, and then after the interview, I will highlight the upcoming petition, I don't know, forum, which is different than what Andy Petros will be telling us about, but it's in Steuben County, and it's how to do petitions, how to run for elected office, what spots are up. So if you are interested or you know somebody interested, make sure you listen to this interview with Mr. Petros, and also stay tuned towards the end so I can get you that information for a different event, which is very similar to what Mr. Petros is doing. But this one happening in Steuben County, where Mr. Petros is happening over Zoom. So there you are. All right, let's take that break. And when we come back, Andy Petros will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
At John G. Ullman & Associates, our clients come first. As a fiduciary, we build personalized plans rooted in our shared ethics and values.
And you've been doing this for 45 years?
Yes, our in-house team creates custom plans built for you and your family.
We like the idea of a relationship that lasts.
That's what we're all about, helping you and your family build and protect wealth for generations. John G. Ullman & Associates, here for everything your money touches.
I'm Marianne Crawford. I've lived here for 70 years, but I do fine right here in my house, and I want to be here as long as I can be. And I feel comfortable knowing that if something happened to me, someone would know because of the cameras that are installed in various spots in my home. That has been a wonderful gift to me, to be able to have that security and that support from Full Circle America, and that's what it's all about.
The Fox Sports app isn't just any sports app. It's your sports app.
For the touchdown!
Yeah, yours. Your teams. Your highlights. Your scores. Your stories. Just choose your favorites to get more of what you want.
To the end zone!
And of course, stream your teams live. The best part is free with your pay TV subscription.
Touchdown!
Grab your Fox Sports app today.
The Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather, up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Akam, and we are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. And this is the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program. I'd like to welcome Andy. Hey, Andy, how are you?
Frank.
Good to see you.
Good, nice to see you. Thanks for having me on.
I'm so glad. This could not fit the show more perfectly, and I'm so glad that you brought this to my attention. We have talked on the show forever about the need for people to get involved locally in politics, whether it is getting the petition signed, whether, most importantly, running for office. Why do you think it is? Because you're going to be holding a Zoom session to help people along this process. Why do you think people are less involved in their communities?
I don't know. I think it's a conundrum for many of us.
Yeah.
Maybe those particularly that maybe pay attention more to local government and politics. I think the pandemic has probably provided enough of a schism for folks. It's interesting. There's such a disconnect, and I don't really have the answer.
Right.
I attend my town meetings pretty regularly. I attend meetings of the Chemung County Legislature. I live down in Southport. And as you and I have even discussed in the past, people just don't even show up to meetings. So getting them to run for office is even a bit of a heavier lift.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be a change in somehow of educating and encouraging people.
I couldn't agree more, because I think there's an intimidation factor. Because if you aren't quote unquote entrenched in politics, if it's not something you study, you don't know where even to begin.
Right,
a lot
I
of people
agree.
wouldn't even know about the Board of Election, let alone who maybe whatever party they're running for, they're head of their party that they could talk to, because that's a real great resource to get the ball rolling. And then they don't know about petitions. I mean, how many times have you taken out petitions where people don't know what you're doing and why they're signing it, if they're even answering the door?
Right. And in this day and age, again, post-pandemic, and I've talked to you about it in the past as a recent candidate and other candidates, it's even difficult just getting people to open the door.
Yeah.
Let alone to explain to them, hey, I need your signature here.
Yeah. It just seems like a scam if you didn't know what it was.
Right, sure.
Here,
Who
I got
is
a
this
clipboard.
person?
Can I have your signature and your address?
Yeah.
No.
No. In this day and age of less trust across the board,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's government or just others in our, each other.
Yeah.
We're at a point where there has to be some way to rebuild some kind of trust and encouragement for folks.
But when you have people, I know it's been a news story lately, the village of Odessa, when you have a village essentially begging for help, that's not a good place for our democracy, a term that's thrown around so often. That is a threat to democracy. When we don't have our local boards and being manned by people that really care about their communities, we're in trouble.
We are, and that is, as you said, is a recent development. They're looking to dissolve the village if they can't get enough people to run, and right now there hasn't been significant interest. And as I've started to put together some information on this Zoom session that I'm going to have in January, I've looked at other locations. It isn't just us.
No.
So I was reading in Michigan, a newspaper, online newspaper from October. There's about 1,200 townships in Michigan.
Okay.
And they expected, and I don't know what the outcome was, but they expected that about 10% of those townships would not have a candidate for town clerk. A little bit more information I had been reading in 2022 in Augusta, Maine, they had no candidates early on for their city council or their board of education. Cincinnati in 2023, fewest candidates ever for their city council. So it's almost epidemic in a way.
It is. And I don't think, and this is not, I'm not going to say conspiratorial side to me, but I don't think boards and councils are open enough to saying, hey, elections are coming up, or there's going to be these seats. We've been spreading the word because it's a heavy local election year in 2025. Trying to spread the word of legislature seats up and various town boards, because I think if people were made aware that through Zoom sessions like yours, that it's not as bad as you think it is. It's not a fun process, but it shouldn't be easy.
Right.
But you should have to work for it. But it's not something that's going to overwhelm you once you get involved.
Right. I mean, there's no reason to not be honest with folks and say, look, it takes work and it takes commitment. And I know in the past when I've coached people, because I've been doing this for quite a while, particularly locally, you have to be willing to give something up for that period of, let's say, April to November.
Yes.
And you have to be willing to go, 5-6 days a week. And not only is it part of the process, but it does enhance your possibility of winning.
Yeah.
And I do agree with you that people that are in this, many people, I won't say everyone, but many people that are in the seats today don't quote unquote broadcast that, hey, there's elections coming up. We need new voices. We want to encourage people to run.
Yep.
I think sometimes those folks that are in the seats don't want the opposition.
Yeah, they want the status quo.
Yeah, and you talked about seats, what's coming up for 2025. So obviously there's village elections that are quicker, coming up sooner. But I know in Chemung County there's 44 town seats in 2025. In Steuben County, I think it's about 107 town seats. Many of those seats, as you know, because you've paid attention, you're also an elected official, will go unopposed.
Yes.
So those folks that are in the seat will get an automatic
win.
Re-election. Yeah, automatic win. Yeah.
And that means there's no time spent talking to the constituents. That's why I think the petition process at its core is important, because to many, that's the only time you're going to see your council person. So I do think there's that. But why this is so important that you're holding this on January 8th, because of the somewhat newly changed petition rules, people have to make this decision very soon.
Right. That it's not good, in my opinion, that it changed.
No.
But people do have to decide sooner, because that petition process to get on the ballot is roughly end of February to early mid-April.
Yeah.
So people do have to, consider it and make a decision. And that is another part of the process that makes it difficult.
Yes.
It's not easy.
No. And you've got to keep in mind, in that smallish window, there's days, because of that time of year, you're not going to be able to go out.
Right.
It's snowy, it's slippery, so it does make it challenging. But get people involved with you. Other people could take out your petitions. People may not be aware of that. It doesn't just have to be you knocking door to door.
Exactly.
Because I know I've drafted, I guess, friends to get involved. They probably didn't want to do it, but the more people you have out there, it's not an impossible task. And then once you get that petition, who knows, you may be running unopposed.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's sadly the nature of it. So it doesn't take a lot of effort to at least start the process and have the conversation. And I think it starts with your Zoom session.
I hope so. I mean, you know, this is a first attempt to, you know, try to use, I think, the knowledge and experience that I've accumulated and just share it with people.
Yeah.
And look, this is regardless of party affiliation. We need people to run, particularly younger people,
yes,
to run for local seats, local government seats. It's just essential. I tell folks all the time, look at, you know, ranting on social media
yes,
is not going to get you the
No.
change that you hope you can get. You really need to be in those seats.
What
those
a perfect
decision-making
word,
seats.
change, because there's nothing, you cannot make more of a difference than being on these boards, because, you know, it's fun to watch the national race, you know, the Trump, the Harris, the whatever race. That's what so many people laser-like focus on. But at the end of the day, who affects your life the most? It's your legislature, it's your town board, where all of a sudden there's some new code and your life is upended and you didn't know because you hadn't attended the meeting.
Right, exactly.
It happens probably every year, you know, where people are outraged and they go in and you say, where were you for the last 11 months?
Right,
Please, I mean, I know I can't speak for everybody on every board. I know on our town board, we love when people come in. It makes me a little nervous. What do they know I don't know?
Right,
but no, we really want to have that interaction.
Right.
And I think most people, I think the people that are doing it for the right reasons want people to get involved.
Well, I would hope that elected officials like yourself and others, and I know myself when I served, it was good to see people there because they're, you know, they're engaged, you know, they're involved, and you do want to hear something back. You know, I mean, I would think to go through a process of being an elected official in a seat for a term and not getting feedback, whether it's good or bad. I mean, you're gonna have to take it and work with it. I would hope you would want to see that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and encourage that.
Well, it's just like in your job. You want to know if you're doing a good job or a bad job, right?
Right.
And that's exactly what it is. But again, I want to stress that point. If you are one of the people that go to social media and talk about change and talk about how we need to make a difference, and yes, it's nice to go to a protest or it's nice to do those type of things and feel active, there is no bigger change you can make than running for local office.
There isn't. I mean, I look at some of the compositions of some of the bodies in our community, governmental bodies, and I think to myself, geez, if you only had 3 or 5 other people, 2 or 3 other people
swing here
that are willing to speak up, that are willing to communicate, that are willing to inform the public, how much better of a local governments would we have?
Exactly. And think of the change on any of these town boards. A swing of 1 or 2 votes makes a complete difference in what decision was made on a budget. I mean, we're just getting over budget season. They can make a huge difference.
Right.
And that's why I'm so glad that you could be on the program, because I feel like a broken record talking about it. So I need someone else to sound like a broken record.
I'm a broken record too. Yeah. You know, I tell people get engaged, run. You know.
Yeah, exactly. So you're having this Zoom session, which I think it's brilliant that it's Zoom, so people can sit in their pajamas and learn about it. It's that time of, you know, that's what we're all become, I think, at this point. But and it's 2 hours long, and I think that's important to note because there's a lot to cover. What did you decide when you were putting together the outline, what to cover? What does this kind of overall talk about?
Well, and this is an introductory. I mean, 2 hours is long, but personally, it's not long enough. What I want to cover is, number one, really why it's important that you consider being in the seat. You know, talking about that change factor from social media that so many people you know, weigh in with. But
they're the real broken records.
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, get engaged.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about what seats are coming up.
Good.
The importance, and you and I have talked about it before. You are in office. You ran.
Yeah.
But as you told me, you went to meetings probably a year prior, consistently.
Yeah.
So that part's important as well, and I think that's another part of the process.
Yes.
Because you do need to understand the issues, you know, and there's no other place to understand them than that seat you're going to be running for, right? We'll talk a little bit about how the Board of Elections can assist. We'll talk a little bit about the petition process, which is really the most important, because it's the most immediate. Now, if folks have interest and want to carry on some other discussions post this session, I'll be more than happy to make some time for them. I think there's so much more to talk about post this. This is pretty much introductory. I had a gentleman contact me. He said, "Look, I'm not looking to run right away, and I don't even know if I'm gonna." I said, "Well, just join in."
Yeah. What do you got to lose?
We want to explore. We want to answer your questions.
Because what do you have to lose? And it is nice to have it all in one place, because I know when I ran, I knew the people involved, especially with the committee and like that, so I could make that phone call and say, hey, what do I do here? Am I doing this right? A lot of people don't even know where to begin, and this is really about getting you to the point of where to begin, right?
Agreed. Absolutely. Yeah. How to begin, right.
And I, to your point, if you decide not to run, or if it's, you lose or whatever, don't give up on the process. Either keep running or go to the meetings, because there's nothing sadder than when you're at a meeting and it goes to public comment and you look around and, well, we can skip that 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Take your, stay engaged, show up, pay attention to the issues, because at some point that body that represents you, whether it's city, county, town, village, they're going to make a decision that you're not going to agree with.
Yeah.
And guess what?
You had no say.
Yeah, it was too late.
It was too late.
Yep.
And that's one thing, and I always feel bad because people don't know the process, and they'll come in and say, how could this have been voted on? Well, we talked about it for the last 6 months.
Right.
And today was the day that we made the decision, and it's too late.
Right.
And I feel bad. I understand why everybody's busy. I understand why they don't always have the time. And I think a lot of these boards and legislatures are almost set up for someone needs to be retired, unfortunately. And that's a whole another conversation we can have another day.
Right.
But I do think people will find it so rewarding. I know that I was maybe embarrassingly proud in a way of when I got sworn in. Now, I thought maybe it lasts more than 10 seconds, which is all it does. But I invited family and friends, because to me, that's an honor.
It is.
When your neighbors vote for you, that's not something you should take lightly, that they trusted you. And there's no feeling in the world like it.
No, there isn't. You ask people to, for their vote, which is pretty close to you want their trust.
Yeah.
Right? And you got in the seat, so you have to carry through. And I know I've told folks in the past, as I've been coaching folks, the only thing that you have that you can promise people once you get in the seat is your voice.
Yeah.
You can't promise more jobs, lower taxes, whatever. Mm-hmm. But you can promise that you'll communicate, you'll speak up.
Yep.
And
serving their best interest.
Serving their best interest.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I also say, if you do have to run a campaign, win or lose, I mean, obviously you don't want to lose, but then you can be proud that you did it. Because there's 95%, if not more, of the people can't say that they even did it and took that step.
Right.
So when someone lectures you about you're not doing enough, you did enough. You did everything that you could.
And maybe down the road you won't run again, but you'll have experience to help somebody, encourage somebody.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I would say maybe you're watching this and you go, I don't want to run. I have no interest. But who would be really good? My neighbor. Right. Or, my son or whoever, my daughter. Talk to them and say, hey, give 2 hours. Just give it a thought. Is there anything that people need to know? I mean, just bring a notepad probably?
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
I tell people, go to the Facebook page. Mm-hmm. It's facebook.com/run for local public office.
Okay.
Or they can email me, apetros@stny.rr.com to sign up.
Okay.
As we get closer to the January 8th, the Zoom session, I'll send out the Zoom link.
Okay.
But everything that you just said, hey, I don't know anybody. I don't know if I want to, but I know others that could benefit by this.
Yeah.
But if you're looking to explore and just understand, just join in.
Yeah. That's all we're asking. Just join in. There's not too much to give up. Is there a time that you've set in stone?
I think I said at 6:30 p.m.
6:30 p.m.
Or excuse me, 6 p.m. I'm
6
sorry.
PM.
Yeah.
Okay,
sorry
so
about
6
that.
p.m. And I will encourage
Wednesday, January 8th.
Wednesday, January 8th. And anybody missed the information on how to sign up for this, you see the number on the bottom of the screen. I can make sure to get them in contact with you, because this is, again, 2025 is a very big local election year. Now's your chance.
That's right.
Get fired up and get involved.
That's right, man. Get involved.
I'm glad you're doing this. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it.
And I will promote it outside of just this interview. Don't worry, because I want it to be a huge success. And please tell us how it goes after, okay?
Will do. Thank you very much.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us.
Heather and I had an argument just like any other couple. I was lost and lonely. I had snapped, I had a gun and I was going to take my own life. Heather helped me realize that there was still life to live. For the better of myself, my family, my weapon is now safely put away.
My son, Ricky, took his life by the use of a firearm. It broke me in ways that I never knew that I could be broken. And I contemplated suicide. Afterwards, we found out his girlfriend, she was pregnant. If that was my grandson, I was gonna have to be here for him. I still own my firearm. I keep it in a safe because I want to keep my grandson and myself safe.
A moment of crisis can happen to anyone.
Store your gun securely, locked, unloaded, and away from ammo.
The Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam. Brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Thanks again to Andy Petros for being on the program this morning. The forum, How to Run for Local Public Office, will be held this Wednesday at 6 p.m. over Zoom. To find out more, you can contact Andy at apatros, that's A-P-A-T-R-O-S, at stny.rr.com. Also, in Steuben County, coming up very soon, is the petition training class for elected officials. Now, you see all the information there on your screen. This class is open to all individuals considering a run for office and will cover essential topics such as the political calendar, how to properly fill out a petition, who can sign and witness a petition, the number of signatures required, filing deadlines, who participates in the caucus and the caucus process, requesting voter lists, campaign filing requirements, a list of all elected officials up for election this year, and updates on the even year law. This session is the only petition training class to be held in Steuben County for 2025. Whether you're planning to run for office or want to learn more about the process, this class provides invaluable guidance for ensuring your petitions and campaign filing meet all necessary legal requirements. So that's coming up on February the 1st, because we, as always, are trying to encourage you to run for elected office. And locally, there are a lot of races up this year, as you heard from Andy Petros. A comment from a viewer while we were talking with Andy. Rather than watching Biden's farewell propaganda, meaning the speeches that he'll be giving that we talked about earlier on in the program, I would rather eat a popsicle in Alaska during the winter. Okay, thank you very much. Now, speaking of winter, Biden's new water heater ban will drive up energy prices for the poor and for seniors, according to experts. The Biden administration is banning certain natural gas water heaters from the market as part of its climate change agenda, a move critics say will jack up energy costs for low-income and senior households. The move in the final days of his administration will take non-condensing natural gas-fired water heaters off the shelves by the year 2029 in a bid to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, which climate change advocates and Biden say cause global warming. So this is very much what we're dealing with in New York as well. The new rule will require a new tankless gas water heater to use about 13% less energy than today's least efficient tankless models. The Biden administration is banning certain natural gas water heaters from that market as part of its climate change agenda. The rules apply to both non-condensing and condensing gas water heaters, but the rules hike efficiency requirements to a threshold that only condensing models can meet, effectively banning the cheaper but less efficient non-condensing models, according to the Washington Free Beacon, and that is coming from Fox News. So we asked this question because it ties in with what we were saying about the Medal of Freedom Awards, and we had so many comments pertaining to that. Michael Goodwin jokingly says that Joe Biden is going to resign so Kamala Harris can become first female president. Okay, it hasn't happened yet, but don't be shocked if the president makes the dramatic move to improve his awful legacy. He's already using every trick in the book to wipe away what Michael Goodwin calls a big stink from his tenure, but nothing is working. Following the election, Biden has spent 2 months trying to get people to forget the last 4 years. The effort hit a cringe-inducing low this week when he awarded prestigious civilian medals to the undeserving likes of Liz Cheney, Hillary Clinton, George Soros, and a list of left-leaning celebrities. The one consistency is that they all supported him. Instead of medals, they ought to get free psychiatric care, says Michael Goodwin. In the real world, to most voters, Biden leaves office in utter disgrace. Beyond his disastrous policies on the economy and the border, he corrupted the Justice Department to go after Donald Trump and was able to keep his job for 4 years only because the White House, aided and abetted by a partisan press corps, engaged in a massive cover-up of his frightening cognitive decline. And we learned from the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post that, I think it was Wall Street Journal, that the White House knew of his diminishing mental abilities on day one in the White House. The ruse, which included administrative lies and social media censorship, worked well enough until the June debate. He was so obviously unfit in that debate to be commander-in-chief for another 4 years that top Democrats and their donors pulled the plug on his candidacy, but now you have Chuck Schumer, who over the weekend on the weekend shows saying that they didn't hide that he's a good guy, and not really answering the question. His presidency might have ended then too, but that would have meant making Harris president, which nobody thought was a good idea on the merits. Besides, Biden would have resisted being shoved out the door, and a party civil war would have handed the election to Trump. That was the eventual outcome anyway, when Harris flopped. So Biden and his media handmaidens are now reduced to the political equivalence of trying to put lipstick on a pig. It's mission impossible. That's how bad the last 4 years have been. And then you have something like the pardoning of his son, which will really be, and I think it was former Congressman Joe Semplinsky on this program who said that in decades from now, that will be studied in history books, and really the one thing that will be remembered about this presidency is his pardoning of his son. And we talked about the commuting of the sentences of 37 of the 40 federal prisoners on death row. Some of the worst. You can look into their backgrounds and wonder why in the world. First of all, if you're against the death penalty, that's one thing. But then why wouldn't it be all 40 people on death row? Why would it only be 37? So it's okay for certain heinous crimes and not others? And, you know, we could talk about the open borders and just his legacy, even though you have Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and others comparing him to George Washington, saying he should be on Mount Rushmore. When Biden eulogizes the former president, meaning Jimmy Carter, don't be surprised if his words reflect how he himself hopes to be remembered, is Michael Goodwin's thought. And that ties in with a Post editorial piece that I had mentioned earlier in the program, and I'd love to get your opinion on it. As Biden and company leave, they're doing their best to trash the country they claim to serve. He's going out guns a-blazing, all barrels blasting away to do as much damage as possible to America before they go. Just look at the dirty laundry list Joe, or whoever's actually making the decisions, has ran through as his last days tick down. We're going to talk about this when we come back, but I realize that I'm running just a tad bit late, so stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
And Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon. Weeknights at 6:30 on Big Fox.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life. that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is History. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horsets. Call them today for all your business and home security needs. Comment from a viewer as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. How much can Trump and the new administration correct the damage done by the failed Biden tenure? Great question. That's the goal, right? That's one of the things that President-elect Trump is tasked with. Now, we're talking about Biden and what he's doing on his way out the door. Look for more bans on, drilling for oil and gas, even after his war on domestic energy helped cripple America strategically and inflict massive price pain at the pump and elsewhere. He even moved to squeeze natural gas exports. That's as the administration agreed to yet another inane, as they said, Paris Accord climate goal to drive down U.S. emissions by close to 70% by 2035. If any of that holds, and the White House insists the drilling ban for one will be tough to roll back, expect yet more suffering for Joe's not named Biden. The White House also loosened visa requirements for foreign workers while inking a labor agreement with federal unions that will let more than 40,000, yes, 40,000 Social Security Administration employees stay hybrid. Plus, the clemency avalanche that we mentioned earlier and the pardoning of Hunter. Don't forget the $4.28 billion in student debt relief Biden okayed just before Christmas. Or the last-minute drive from the White House to throw out the billions from the CHIPS Act and other progressive boondoggles out the door and windows while they still can. Or the veto of a bipartisan bill to expand the federal judiciary to unclog key courts, which the Bidenites turned against because they wouldn't be able to pick the judges. It's clear from the scope and energy of these plans that Joe himself isn't the chief force behind any of it. It's staffers driving the car here. The same staff who've been calling most of the shots for 4 disastrous years and so led to a historic and humiliating defeat for Democrats. Yet it hasn't prompted them to change direction, even though Chuck Schumer over the weekend saying they were going to do a look in the mirror, right? So they lost hard, and now they're taking it out on you, is the thought from the editorial board at the New York Post. So Joe can blather all he wants about his love of America. In these final days of his failed administration, he and his lackeys are only delivering more failures, showing themselves not just petty and corrupt, but filled with hate for the country they were supposed to serve. Now, we do have to take a short break. I do want to send a congratulations to friend of Frankly Speaking and Congressman Nick Langworthy, who was sworn in for the second term in Congress. He said about this honor, quote, "I'm honored to once again serve the people of the Southern Tier and Western New York in Congress, and I look forward to serving the new constituents in Niagara and Tioga counties. Now it is time to deliver on President Trump's agenda of securing our borders, making our streets safer, creating a stronger economy, and solidifying a strong America for future generations. Let's get to work." Thank you, Congressman Langworthy. We got to take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Today's top story, increasing fuel costs continue to drive up inflation, making it harder to afford everything from food to home heating.
Here at Hustlesons, we know the only way to beat inflation is to fight inflation. So we're fighting back with zero interest financing and big cash rebates. Get a 4-person hot tub for your family for as little as $100 per month and pay zero interest. Or save up to $3,000 on a fabulous salt system hot tub. And of course, you will always get Hustlesons' unbelievable service. Don't let inflation fears kill your dreams. Fight back with Hustlesons. Remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hustlesons.
Sid and Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon. Weeknights at 6:30 on Big Fox.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, wrapping up this morning's discussion. A few comments from viewers. First off, I had to pay off my student loans. I wonder if I could get reimbursed. Great question. I would like to know that as well. I think there's many people asking that, or people that paid off perhaps their children's school loans, and seeing so many others getting this handout that was thrown out by the Supreme Court, but Biden braggadociously saying that that doesn't matter and that he's going to do it anyway. Comment from Ken: I still cringe when I hear Biden did this and Biden did that. It minimizes the fact that the Democrat leadership has been running the country. Biden will be blamed for all the bad decisions, and the Democrat leadership will escape condemnation for damaging the country. Thank you, Ken. Now, we had mentioned Mike Johnson, of course, getting Speaker of the House. Senator Jim Banks saying that it had a lot to do with Trump weighing in. I'm for doing it on one bill, and this week it's good evidence. Donald Trump weighed in on support of Mike Johnson. I don't think Mike Johnson would be Speaker of the House this morning if Donald Trump wouldn't have weighed in last week. Spent political capital to help him get elected on one vote, and to me, that's a positive sign that House Republicans are unified behind Donald Trump and the Trump agenda. They're hearing from our supporters at home. We have to get this done, secure the border, make our military focused on winning and fighting wars and strong again. Make the tax cuts on working families permanent. The Trump agenda, get that done as quickly as we can. It's a reconciliation bill. If it's 2, it's 10. We got to make sure we get it done. And that's what the Post editorial board said. Okay, House Republicans managed to reelect Mike Johnson as Speaker. Now it's on to governing. The vote represents progress over the last Congress, when it took 5 days to install Kevin McCarthy as Speaker, and then, after GOP rebels took his head, 3 weeks to replace him. Wow, I forgot it was that long. The clear difference: President-elect Donald Trump's endorsement, including some final arm-twisting calls. And Trump in the White House, plus the Republican majority in the Senate, will ease many of the GOP tensions that bedeviled the House these last 2 years. Not least, it means at least a partial return to regular order so that the major spending bills get signed into law outside of those obscene omnibus Christmas trees. Governing still won't be easy. The Biden years leave America needing a cleanup in every aisle. And while most Democrats aren't signaling all-out resistance, this time around, none are rushing to pick up mops to help out. But at least the transition is now moving full steam ahead, and Mike Johnson is in place to herd the House cats. We are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Oh, we had so much more to get to. Today is a historic day, as the election is to be certified later on. They're even calling it probably the biggest political comeback in history at CNN. Oh, by the way, just real quickly, Melania Trump, there's going to be a documentary about her life set for Amazon. That is going to be coming out with a theatrical release as well. Kind of interesting. We'll find out more about the First Lady. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you to Andy Petros telling us all about that How to Run for Local Office forum coming up on January 8th at 6 p.m. over Zoom. Thank you to Andy. All right. Join us every weekday morning starting at 6 for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. I look forward to it already.
Are you ready for winter in New York State? Ready for thrills like this? Discoveries like this? Views like this? Are you ready to make memories? Plan the perfect trip or have an impromptu getaway. It's time to explore everything that makes New York easy to love. Discover more at iloveny.com.